When Caitlin Clark entered the WNBA, her arrival was supposed to be a watershed moment for the league. Instead, it sparked a quiet storm of resistance. The media pullback was noticeable. ESPN and Fox barely touched her meteoric rise, and fans who once flooded arenas were left wondering where the spotlight had gone. Strategic blunders within the league. From sidelining Clark during key plays to botching her merchandise rollout.
If you're here for the real story and not the filtered version, subscribe. And if you're sticking around for the next meltdown, you better definitely subscribe.
Created the impression of a deliberate effort to suppress her influence. Create new folder. Aaliyah Boston speaks. The stakes were raised when insiders pointed to internal resentment, as Aaliyah Boston's remarks only fueled speculation that Clark's success wasn't just being overlooked. It was being actively undermined. But Clark's brand has refused to fold. Caitlin's court and other high-impact campaigns continue to captivate fans, proving her reach extends far beyond what the league is willing to embrace. If the WNBA doesn't recalibrate, it's not just Clark's career they risk. It's the future of the entire league. Whether they choose to empower their most bankable star or keep protecting a fragile status quo will define women's basketball for years to come. Caitlin Clark walked into the WNBA with more hype than most male rookies ever dream of. She had just rewritten the history books in college basketball, packed out arenas, and brought women's hoops to the front page of sports media. She was the most talked about athlete in the country, and not just in women's sports. We're talking about someone who could single-handedly sell out stadiums and shift TV ratings. And then, as soon as she got drafted, the silence hit. Not from fans, not from brands, but from the league and the networks who were supposed to amplify her rise, not bury it. ESPN, Fox, all the usual players, suddenly went quiet. WNBA coverage dropped off a cliff right when Clark's professional career was starting. No big rollout. No media blitz. Just crickets. You'd think the league would be doing victory laps with their new star, but instead, it felt like someone hit the brakes. On purpose. Why? Because Caitlin Clark didn't just bring attention. She brought disruption. She threatened the hierarchy. Her presence alone exposed the WNBA's outdated systems, its uneven marketing strategies, and the uncomfortable reality that someone new could upstage the old guard overnight. Instead of leaning into that transformation, the league seemed to resist it, and not quietly. Getting hit. From day one on the court, Clark was met with aggressive play, excessively physical defense, harsh fouls, even open hostility. That happens in pro sports, sure, but what didn't happen was lead protection. There was no consistent enforcement from referees. No firm stance from leadership, and absolutely no indication that the league would have her back. It was as if her presence ruffled too many feathers, and instead of protecting their biggest asset, the WNBA backed off. Meanwhile, merchandising? A mess. Her name barely appeared in the league's official store. Jersey delays. Poor product rollout. A complete failure to capitalize on the most marketable player in years. Fans were searching for ways to support her, and coming up empty. That's not just incompetence. That's sabotage-level negligence. And it didn't stop there. Clark was sidelined during key plays. Her role on the court was minimized. She wasn't the center of the team's strategy the way any rookie with her resume should have been. We're talking about the leading scorer in NCAA history, male or female, and somehow she's riding the perimeter, barely getting touches in crunch time. That's not strategy. That's a statement. And then the cracks inside the league started to show. Take Aaliyah Boston, Clark's own teammate, publicly downplaying her impact. You'd think there'd be unity or at least professional solidarity. But instead, we got passive-aggressive quotes and thinly veiled resentment, which only fueled the growing theory that Clark's rise had stirred internal jealousy, that the players who'd waited years for their spotlight didn't want to share it with someone who showed up and instantly stole the show. The worst part? The league let it happen. They didn't manage the narrative. They didn't rally behind their star. They watched it all unfold and did nothing to stop the bleeding. Meanwhile, ratings dipped. Merch sales stalled. Casual fans who showed up for Clark felt the cold shoulder and walked away. It wasn't just a missed opportunity. It was a PR disaster. And then the ESPN leak dropped. Reports surfaced suggesting that the WNBA, along with key media partners, had intentionally scaled back Clark's exposure, that they feared she was too popular, too fast, that instead of lifting up the league, her fame might overshadow everyone else. If that sounds backward, that's because it is. Any league in its right mind would kill for a breakout star with this much crossover appeal. But the WNBA? They panicked. They chose politics over. Now, here's where it gets even more twisted. While the league stumbled, Clark kept building. Her team launched Caitlin's Court, a sleek, grassroots campaign that reconnected with fans directly. No middleman, no watered-down messaging. Just pure, unfiltered access to the brand of Caitlin Clark. Pop-up events, exclusive merch, digital rollouts that outperformed the league's own campaigns. In other words, she did what the WNBA couldn't. She created buzz. Because despite the hits she took, on and off the court, her personal brand never wavered. She stayed visible. She stayed relevant. And she kept her fan base engaged, all while the league dragged its feet, seemingly hoping the noise would die down. But it didn't. Instead, the narrative flipped. Fans started asking harder questions. Why wasn't the WNBA protecting its stars? Why was there so little support for Clark's marketing? Why were physical plays against her barely penalized? And most importantly, why was the league treating their golden ticket like a problem instead of solution? The truth is, Clark exposed the WNBA's lack of infrastructure for stardom. She didn't just challenge the other players. She challenged the system. She revealed how unprepared the league was to deal with a transcendent athlete who could pull mainstream eyes into women's basketball. And the response? A mixture of resentment, deflection, and silence. That kind of resistance doesn't just hurt Clark. It hurts the whole sport. Because whether they like it or not, she is the draw. She's the reason new fans tuned in. She's the reason headlines were being written. And when the league failed to support her, they weren't just ignoring one player. They were signaling to every young star that breakout success might come with a target on your back. Let's be clear. Caitlin Clark didn't fail. The system around her did. But here's where it gets interesting. Clark's trajectory is still trending up. Year 3 is already being hyped as her comeback era. The narrative is shifting. Fans are rallying. Brands are lining up. And if the WNBA has any sense, they'll finally recognize what they got before it's too late. Because this isn't just about one player. It's about the future of women's basketball. Clark represents a turning point. A chance to scale the sport in ways we haven't seen before. But only if the league embraces the change. Only if it stops resisting the spotlight she brings and starts leveraging it. The WNBA has a decision to make. Double down on the old guard, the internal politics, the fear of imbalance, or step into the modern era and bet on the player who's already proven she can carry the weight. If they choose wrong again, they won't just lose Clark's momentum. They'll risk setting the sport back an entire decade. Because fans aren't dumb. They see what's happening. They see the lack of coverage, the weird on-court decisions, the quiet resentment. And they're not buying the league's silence anymore. But they are still buying into Caitlin. And that's the wild card. Her resilience, her branding, and her fan engagement are doing what the WNBA's leadership refused to, keeping the dream alive. She's built something that can't be ignored. And the next season could either be her redemption arc or the league's final warning shot. So now we wait. Will the WNBA course correct and embrace its biggest star? Or will it keep getting in its own way, scared what happens when one player outshines a pack? Because one thing's for sure, Caitlin Clark isn't the problem. She's the proof that women's basketball can be just as thrilling, marketable, and messy as any other sport out there. And the only real sabotage here is pretending. Let us know what you think. Is the league protecting its own or pushing away the one thing that could save it? Drop your thoughts in the comments, like if you're tired of the politics, and hit that subscribe button if you want more breakdowns of the drama behind the scoreboard. Women's basketball deserves better, and we're not looking away. All right, let's dig deeper, because this isn't just a Caitlin Clark problem. This is a symptom of a bigger dysfunction inside the WNBA, and frankly, it's been brewing for a while. The league wants mainstream attention, right? It wants the respect, the viewership, the sponsorship dollars, the culture moments. And yet, The second someone shows up who delivers all of that on a silver platter, suddenly it's too much, too fast? That's not a marketing issue. That's an identity crisis. Let's call it what it is. Gatekeeping. Because Clark didn't wait her turn. She didn't come up quietly, didn't play politics, didn't blend into the system. She showed up and immediately became the face of the league, whether they liked it or not. And that level of power shift, it shook the foundation. Especially when that power didn't come through league channels. It came from fans. From people outside the usual WNBA bubble. And that's a threat to any closed system. The result? Subtle sabotage masked as team balance and rookie growth. Mismarketing. Passive protection. Key moments where she's literally off the floor in crunch time, despite being the only reason casual viewers are watching. You can't tell people she's a generational talent and then treat her like a background player. That disconnect? It doesn't just confuse fans, it insults them. Now, let's talk about the media blackout. There was a time, just months before her debut, when Clark could not trend. She was dominating sports news cycles, getting primetime interviews, leading SportsCenter, lighting up Twitter feeds. Then, the moment she's officially WNBA, that flood turns to a trickle. Why? Because networks took their cues from the league's cold shoulder. And when ESPN isn't running highlights, and Fox isn't doing panel debates, and Bleacher Report isn't clipping buzzer beaters, you're starving a fan base that just showed up. That's a coordinated retreat. That's not coincidence. Even worse, the few moments that to make headlines, they were negative. Clips of Clark getting shoved, fouled hard, benched without explanation. Not her shots, not her dimes, her bruises. That became the story. And while she took it all with poise, the optics spoke volumes. Welcome to the WNBA. Now prove you, but belong to what exactly? Because this version of the league, this insular defensive posture, it's not built to grow. It's built to preserve. And that's exactly what's holding it back. Growth requires disruption. Disruption requires stars. And stars require space. The kind of space Clark hasn't been given. Meanwhile, her own camp figured out faster than the league ever could. While the WNBA scrambled to define her, Clark's team moved forward. Caitlin's court didn't wait for league approval. It built direct relationships. Digital first. Fan-focused. Authentic. It didn't water her down to make her palatable to the old guard. It celebrated exactly what made her different. And that's why she's still winning, even when the box score doesn't say so. Because outside of the WNBA bubble, Clark is still a star. She's still pulling numbers. She's still the topic. She's still the one every brand wants. The league could be riding that wave. It could be printing money with her face on it. Instead, it's doubling down on parity, at the cost of popularity. Let's not pretend this is about basketball. If this were purely about talent, Clark would be the engine of every promo. She'd be featured on every ticket, every commercial, every campaign. But instead, we got silence, delay, awkward media answers, and players publicly shading her like it's some high school hierarchy contest. Why? Because the league wasn't ready for someone to come in and be bigger than the WNBA itself. But here's the thing. Every major league needs that moment. The NBA had Jordan. The NFL had Brady. Tennis had Serena. These weren't just great players. They were cultural events. And yes, they changed the balance of power. Yes, they made other players jealous. Yes, they disrupted the norm. But without them, the sport doesn't grow. Clark is that inflection point for women's basketball. And this resistance to her dominance, it's not just short-sighted. It's actively self-destructive. Because here's where it gets dangerous for the league. Fans don't have to stick around. The Caitlin Clark fans, the ones who bought tickets, clicked highlights, subscribed to the WNBA app, they're not legacy viewers. They're new. They came for her. And if the league continues to make it harder to see her, support her, celebrate her, those fans will dip fast. You don't get a second debut. The window for turning a moment into a movement is tiny, and the WNBA is wasting it. Meanwhile, the locker room dynamics are becoming harder to ignore. That Aaliyah Boston moment wasn't just a quote. It was a signal, The undercurrent of resentment is real. The vibe is earn your spot, not let's build together. That's not a healthy culture. It's a fragmented one, and fans can feel it. Every weird post-game exchange, every dismissive headline, every snubbed assist. It all adds up. And Clark? She's been professional. Quiet. Focused. But make no mistake, she sees it too. You don't walk into that kind of storm and not notice the forecast. So where does this go? Well, year 3 is going to be crucial. Because if Clark's brand keeps expanding, if Caitlin's court turns into a full-on media machine, if she starts partnering with platforms outside the league, then the WNBA risks becoming a background character in its own story. CC Caitlin Clark. And if that happens, it's not just a PR fail. It's a crisis of relevance. Because Clark has options. She doesn't need the league the way the league needs her. Sponsors will follow her. Fans will follow her. Media will follow her. If she starts prioritizing brand over basketball, the league only has itself to blame. But here's the silver lining. It's not too late. The WNBA can still course correct. It can embrace Clark's success without turning it into a power struggle. It can highlight her and elevate others. It can stop treating her stardom like a problem to be managed and start seeing it as the gift that it is, because she's not just a good player. She's a moment. And moments like this don't come often. It's on the league to decide whether they'll rise with her or watch from the sidelines as she builds her own empire. And look, no one's saying Clark is perfect. She's still learning the pace of the pro game. She's had off nights. She's figuring out how to navigate a league that clearly didn't roll out the red carpet. But the reaction to her, the strategic retreat, the half-hearted support, the clumsy rollouts, that's not about her performance. That's about an ego doesn't build leagues. Stars do. So to the WNBA, stop protecting the past. Start building the future. You've got someone who already did the hard part, who made people care. Now meet her halfway. And to everyone watching, don't let this slide past unnoticed. If you felt that weird energy, if you've seen the league fumble the bag, if you want to scream, every time Clark was benched in the fourth quarter, speak up. Let's be real. The WNBA is sitting on a gold mine and acting like it's a liability. Caitlin Clark didn't just break records. She broke through the noise, through the niche, through every barrier women's basketball has faced when it comes to mainstream attention. She's not some feel-good underdog story. She's the reason people who've never watched a WNBA game in their lives suddenly knew game times and jersey numbers. And instead of rolling out a full-blown marketing assault to lock that momentum in, the league played small. You could feel it in every awkward post-game interview, in every highlight that didn't make the broadcast, in the way Clark's historic college run was treated like a chapter that closed the minute she stepped onto a pro court, like they wanted to hit reset on her hype instead of scaling it up. That kind of strategic silence, that's not just bad business, it's self-sabotage. And what's wild is everyone else seemed to get it. The sponsors, already on board. The fans, showing up in droves. The cameras, still trained on her even when the league wouldn't be. But the leadership, the coverage, the teammates throwing subtle digs and acting like her rise is somehow a threat to theirs? It's giving middle school lunch table energy, not a pro sports league. And we need to talk about the gaslighting that started to creep in. Because anytime criticism is brought up, the narrative flips. Suddenly it's us, the fans, who don't understand the game, or we're being too emotional, or disrespecting veterans. Like, sorry, what? Pointing out that the league's biggest draw as being underpromoted isn't disrespect. It's reality. You want new fans? Then expect new standards. And the new standard is simple. When you've got someone who can grow the sport exponentially, you put them front and center. You don't hide them behind some outdated idea of balance or earning respect. You don't shrink their role to protect egos. You build the league around them. Period. This isn't just how sports work. It's how business. Clark isn't the WNBA's problem. She's the solution to decades of struggle for viewership, relevance, and mainstream buy-in. She's the proof that people do care about women's sports. When the product is accessible, the story is compelling, and the stars are treated like stars. But that requires vision. And right now, vision is what's missing. Look at the big picture. The league needs money. It needs ratings. It needs fan loyalty. And most of all, it needs a moment to shift perception. Caitlin Clark is that moment. She already turned college games into cultural events. So why isn't the WNBA riding that wave? Instead, it's trying to slow her down, level the playing field, spread the spotlight so thin that nobody gets to shine. And here's the kicker. It's not working. Ratings are sliding. Buzz is cooling. The new fans who came for Clark aren't sticking around for what the league is offering. And it's not because they don't like women's basketball. It's because they can tell when someone's being iced out. They can feel the awkward tension. They know when a star is being muted instead of celebrated. You don't have to be a hardcore fan to see it. You just have to be paying attention. And now, Clark's camp is starting to do what the league wouldn't. Build the brand. Directly, with or without institutional support. That's powerful, but also a warning. Because if Clark's personal brand becomes bigger than the WNBA's platform, the league becomes irrelevant in its own narrative. It becomes optional. And once that happens, good luck controlling anything. This should have been a new era. The Caitlin Clark era. Not because she's better than everyone else, but because she brings something different. Something marketable. Something that changes the game's ceiling. But instead, the league treated her like a wild card to contain, not a rocket to launch. So where do we go from here? Well, Clark's story isn't over. Not even close. She's still evolving, still grinding, still trying to lift the league, even when it won't lift her. But that patience won't last forever. And when the time comes, when she's fully established with her own media channels, her own fan infrastructure, her own partnerships, what leverage will the league even have left? Because let's be clear, she doesn't need the WNBA to thrive. But the WNBA, it definitely needs her. They've got one more shot to get this right, to support her, to strategically center her in the future of the league without making it look like favoritism, but as a survival tactic it honestly is. Because if they keep going down this path of underpromotion, on-court politics, and lukewarm media support, it won't be Caitlin Clark who's walking out. It'll be the fans. So if you're fed up watching the league fumble what could have been a golden age, drop a comment. Let us know what you saw, what you felt, what you're still waiting. Like this video if you're tired of missed opportunities. Share it with someone who's still trying to make sense of the silence. And hit that subscribe button, because this story, it's only just beginning. And trust me, the next chapter is going to be loud.